What would you do if someone called the police on you for simply being a parent? Imagine this. You're spending a quiet afternoon at the park with your child, enjoying the sunshine and laughter, when suddenly a stranger accuses you of kidnapping your own daughter. This isn't fiction. It's happened to countless families around the world. Before we dive into this powerful story, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And here's something to think about. Has something like this ever happened to you or someone you know? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. Your perspective matters. Now, let's get started with this emotional journey. Today, we'll tell the story of one father who faced this nightmare and how he turned it into a lesson about prejudice, love, and resilience. It was a warm Saturday afternoon at Maple Grove Park, the kind of day that made you want to linger under the shade of the towering oak trees. Families were scattered across the grass, children chasing each other, dogs barking playfully, and parents chatting idly on benches. Among them was Carlos, a single father in his early 30s, sitting on a picnic blanket with his 6-year-old daughter, Sofia. Carlos had always been hands-on with Sofia, ever since her mother passed away 3 years ago. He juggled work and parenthood with quiet determination, finding joy in the little things, like these afternoons at the park. Today, Sofia was wearing her favorite yellow sundress, her dark curls bouncing as she ran back and forth between the swings and the sandbox. "Papi, watch me!" she called out, giggling as she climbed onto the jungle gym. "I'm watching, mija," Carlos replied with a smile, snapping a quick photo on his phone. But not everyone in the park was smiling. Across the way, a woman named Karen sat stiffly on a bench, scrolling through her tablet while occasionally glancing up at the scene around her. Karen wasn't new to Maple Grove Park. She came here often, though no one could say she blended in. Her designer sunglasses perched atop her perfectly styled blonde hair, and her pristine white sundress seemed almost too delicate for the casual setting. At first, Karen barely noticed Carlos and Sofia, but then something caught her eye. Sofia laughing loudly as Carlos chased her around the playground, pretending to be a monster. To most people, it looked like an ordinary moment of parental bonding. To Karen, however, it raised suspicions. Why is that man so loud? Why does he look so different from the girl? Is she even his child? Karen's mind raced with questions, fueled by stereotypes and assumptions. She watched intently as Carlos scooped Sofia into his arms, both of them laughing uncontrollably. Instead of seeing a loving father playing with his daughter, Karen saw only what she wanted to believe: a dangerous stranger abducting an innocent child. "That's it," Karen muttered to herself, standing abruptly. "I can't just sit here and do nothing." She marched over to where Carlos and Sofia were now sitting on the picnic blanket, sharing a bag of chips. "Excuse me," Karen said sharply, her voice cutting through the peaceful atmosphere. Carlos looked up, startled. "Yes?" "This girl," Karen demanded, pointing at Sofia. "Is she yours?" Carlos blinked, confused. "Of course she's mine. Why are you asking?" Karen crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "Prove it." Sofia tugged at her father's sleeve. "Papi, who is this lady?" "It's okay, mija," Carlos reassured her, though his tone betrayed his growing unease. Turning back to Karen, he asked calmly, "What exactly are you implying?" "Oh, don't play dumb with me," Karen snapped. "You don't look anything alike. How do I know you didn't kidnap her?" The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud, silencing the laughter and chatter around them. Parents nearby paused mid-conversation, their eyes darting nervously toward the confrontation. Carlos felt a surge of anger bubbling inside him, but he forced himself to stay composed, for Sofia's sake. "Look, ma'am," he began, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "This is my daughter. We're just here having a normal day at the park. If you have concerns, maybe you should ask her yourself." He gestured to Sofia, who clung tightly to his arm. "Tell her, Misha. Who am I?" "You're my papi," Sofia said confidently, looking directly at Karen, "and I love him very much." For a brief moment, Karen faltered. There was something undeniable in Sofia's words, something pure and genuine. But instead of backing down, Karen doubled down. "That doesn't prove anything," she insisted. "Children can be coached. I'm calling the police." With that, she whipped out her phone and dialed 911, her fingers trembling slightly. Carlos sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "Ma'am, please, you're making a mistake." But Karen wasn't listening. She spoke rapidly into the phone, her voice rising with indignation. "Yes, hello? I'd like to report a possible kidnapping. A man at Maple Grove Park has a young girl with him, but they don't look related. Hurry, please." As she hung up, Carlos turned to Sofia, whose wide brown eyes were filled with confusion. "Don't worry, mija," he whispered, pulling her close. "Everything will be okay." But deep down, he knew this wasn't going to be easy. In moments like these, fear and prejudice can blind us to the truth. But sometimes, the truth has a way of shining through, even in the face of injustice. What happens next will test Carlos's patience, Sofia's innocence, and the community's ability to see beyond appearances. When accusations fly and tensions rise, the line between truth and assumption becomes dangerously blurred. For Carlos and Sofia, what started as a peaceful afternoon at the park is about to escalate into a situation that will test their bond and the community's sense of justice. Within minutes, the calm of Maple Grove Park was shattered by the distant wail of sirens. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the playground. Parents quickly gathered their children, whispering nervously as officers stepped out of the vehicles. Carlos stood up, holding Sofia protectively by the hand. His heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew how these situations could go wrong, especially for someone who looked like him. "Stay close to me, Misha," he murmured, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Karen, meanwhile, stood triumphantly near the edge of the picnic area, her arms crossed and her chin tilted upward. She watched as the officers approached, her expression smug. "What seems to be the problem here?" asked Officer Ramirez, a tall man with olive skin and a kind but authoritative demeanor. His partner, Officer Chen, a younger woman with sharp eyes and a notepad in hand, stood beside him, observing the scene carefully. Before Carlos could speak, Karen stepped forward. "I'm the one who called you," she announced, her tone dripping with self-righteousness. "This man has a young girl with him, but they don't look related. I think he kidnapped her." Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow, glancing between Carlos and Sofia. "Sir, can you explain what's going on?" Carlos took a deep breath, meeting the officer's gaze directly. "My name is Carlos Mendoza. This is my daughter, Sofia. We're just here, spending time together at the park. That woman," he gestured toward Karen, "accused me of kidnapping her without any evidence." Sofia tugged at her father's hand, looking up at the officers with wide, innocent eyes. "He's my papi," she said softly. "We live together. He takes care of me." Officer Chen knelt down to Sofia's level, her expression softening. "Hi there, sweetheart. Can you tell me your full name?" "Sofia Mendoza," the little girl replied confidently. "And how old are you?" "6." Officer Chen nodded, jotting down notes. Then she turned to Carlos. "Do you have any identification on you, sir? Something that shows your relationship to the child?" Carlos hesitated, his stomach sinking. He had left his wallet at home in his rush to get to the park. "I forgot it today, but I swear to you, she's my daughter. Her birth certificate, school records, all of it proves we're family." Karen scoffed loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Of course he'd say that. Kidnappers always deny it, don't they?" Officer Ramirez shot her a warning glance. "Ma'am, please, let us handle this." But Karen wasn't done. "You should check her backpack or something. Maybe there's proof inside." Carlos clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure. "Ma'am, this is ridiculous. My daughter's backpack has nothing to do with your baseless accusations." Ignoring him, Officer Chen gestured to Sofia's small pink backpack lying on the blanket. "May we take a look inside, sir?" Carlos sighed, nodding reluctantly. "Go ahead." As Officer Chen opened the bag, Sofia peeked over curiously. Inside were the usual items: a water bottle, snacks, a coloring book, and a stuffed bunny Sofia had carried since she was a baby. "This looks like a kid's stuff," Officer Chen remarked, closing the bag. "Nothing unusual here." Karen huffed, clearly frustrated. "Well, maybe she's lying too. Children can be manipulated, you know." Officer Ramirez frowned, turning to Karen. "Ma'am, unless you have concrete evidence to support your claim, I suggest you step back and let us do our job." For the first time, Karen seemed unsure of herself. She glanced around, noticing the disapproving stares from other parents in the park. Still, she refused to back down entirely. "Fine," she muttered. "But mark my words, if something happens later, it's on all of you." In moments of crisis, assumptions can overshadow facts. But as the investigation unfolds, the truth begins to reveal itself. Not just about Carlos and Sofia, but also about the biases that drive people like Karen to act out of fear rather than reason. In the face of prejudice, silence can be complicity, but sometimes it only takes one voice to challenge the narrative. As the tension in the park reaches its peak, unexpected allies emerge, reminding us that humanity often shines brightest in moments of darkness. Karen's accusation hung heavy in the air, but the mood among the bystanders was shifting. Parents who had initially watched nervously from a distance began exchanging glances, their discomfort turning into quiet outrage. One woman stepped forward, a mother named Lisa, who often brought her son to the park and had seen Carlos and Sofia there many times before. "Excuse me," Lisa said firmly, addressing the officers. "I've seen this man and his daughter here almost every weekend. They're regulars. He's always been kind and attentive with her. There's no way he's done anything wrong." Another parent chimed in. "Yeah, I've seen them too. That little girl adores him. It's obvious they're family." Karen bristled at the growing support for Carlos. "You don't know what you're talking about. Looks can be deceiving." Officer Ramirez held up a hand, silencing Karen. "Ma'am, we appreciate your concern, but unless you have evidence to back up your claims, we'll need to focus on verifying Mr. Mendoza's story." Carlos felt a flicker of relief as the tide began to turn. but he knew the ordeal wasn't over yet. Officer Chen pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, we're going to need someone to run a quick check on Carlos Mendoza. We also need to confirm guardianship records for Sofia Mendoza." While they waited, Carlos knelt down to Sofia's level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Mija, are you okay?" Sofia nodded, though her eyes were wide with confusion. "Papi, why is that lady so mad at us?" Carlos sighed, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes, people make assumptions based on how others look, or where they come from. But remember, no matter what anyone says, we know the truth, and that's all that matters. Sofia hugged him tightly. "I love you, Papi." "I love you too, Mija," Carlos whispered, holding her close. Minutes later, Officer Ramirez received confirmation over the radio. "Mr. Mendoza checks out clean. Guardianship records confirm Sofia is his biological daughter." Karen's face fell, her confidence crumbling. But that doesn't prove anything. Records can be forged." Officer Chen turned to her sharply. "Ma'am, making false accusations is a serious offense. If you continue down this path, we may need to investigate further, this time into your behavior." For the first time, Karen looked genuinely shaken. She glanced around at the crowd, realizing she was now the center of unwanted attention. Several parents were openly glaring at her, their expressions a mix of anger and disappointment. Lisa stepped closer, her tone icy. "You should be ashamed of yourself. Accusing an innocent man of something so vile. It's disgusting. What if someone did that to you or your family?" Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed off, muttering under her breath. As the dust settles, the weight of the moment lingers, not just for Carlos and Sofia, but for everyone who witnessed it. For some, it's a reminder of the harm caused by unchecked prejudice. For others, it's a call to action, to speak up when they see injustice unfolding before their eyes. With Karen gone, the atmosphere in the park slowly returned to normal. Parents resumed their conversations, and children went back to playing, though the incident left an indelible mark on everyone present. Carlos thanked the officers, his voice tinged with gratitude and exhaustion. "Thank you for handling this fairly. I'm just glad my daughter didn't have to go through anything worse." Officer Ramirez nodded sympathetically. "We're sorry you had to deal with this, Mr. Mendoza. Unfortunately, situations like these happen more often than they should. Just know that we're here to help whenever you need us." As the officers left, Lisa approached Carlos and Sofia, offering a warm smile. "I'm really sorry about what happened. That woman had no right to accuse you like that." "It's not your fault," Carlos replied, managing a small smile. "Thank you for speaking up. It means a lot." Sofia tugged at her father's sleeve. "Can we go home now, Papi?" Carlos nodded, picking her up gently. "Yeah, Mija, let's go home." As they walked away, Lisa called after them. "Hey, if you ever need anything, whether it's advice or just someone to talk to, you've got friends here." Carlos turned back, his expression softening. "Thanks. Really, thank you." Later that evening, as Sofia played quietly in her room, Carlos sat on the couch, staring at the photo he'd taken earlier that day, the one of Sofia laughing on the jungle gym. Despite everything, he couldn't help but smile. "She's strong, just like her mom," he murmured to himself. And for the first time since the ordeal began, he allowed himself to feel hopeful, not just for Sofia's future, but for a world where people might learn to see beyond their biases. In life, misunderstandings and prejudices will always exist. But stories like Carlos and Sofia's remind us that love, resilience, and community can overcome even the darkest moments. So the next time you witness an injustice, ask yourself, will you stand by silently, or will you choose to make a difference?